be in our podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and here today I will be reviewing the sadly canceled TV show Everything Sucks. Everything Sucks is a show co-created by Ben York-Jones and Michael Mohan. It follows a group of outcasts in boring high school's AV and drama clubs who are trying to brave the ups and downs of teenage life in 1996. The two crews of nerdy students are frustrated that no one is taking them seriously, so they decide the best way to make their high school is to join forces and make a movie that will help them get noticed. Which isn't true. We'll get into that. And there's usual teenage romance issues to deal with. Luke, the de facto ringleader of the AV club, falls for Kate, the principal's daughter, but she necessarily doesn't reciprocate the romantic feelings Luke has for her and is dealing with her own issues because she's a lesbian. So let's get right into the show. So overall, I love the show. Obviously, a lot of people right now are very mad that the show got canceled because the two main leads of the show, Luke and Kate, Luke was black and Kate was a lesbian. So obviously, it's very rare to see minorities as lead roles. So everyone's sad. But personally, for me, well, I agree with that. The show had so much heart. It was so amazing, and the vibe of the show was really good. It was a very complex show, and from some articles that were written about the show, the two creators, Ben Jones and Michael Mohan, talked about actually how they didn't have the biggest budget, even with not that much money. They still created a very great show. The vibe of the show, obviously, as it's based in the 90s, it gives off a very 90s vibe, very maroon and tan type vibe, in the sense that everything is maroon or tan. However, actually, they do play around with the colors of the show. Sometimes the ones that I was actually especially surprised and kind of shocked by was the fact that there is a scene where Luke is coming home from a blockbuster after his dad doesn't recognize him because he goes to try to meet his dad who left him when he was 7 years old. And just as he is sitting on this bus and all these lights are passing, it's a very, very aesthetic scene for a very emotional, very sad scene, because as Luke is breaking down, the background is very bright and it's very aesthetic to look at. Also, just in general, the show also gives off the vibe of Stranger Things. A lot of people have been comparing the show to Stranger Things. Especially, I think one of the biggest things that you could compare it to is Oliver and Tyler's relationship compared to in Stranger Things, Steve and Dustin, because they're both very similar to each other. Both Tyler and Dustin are kind of the comedic relief people of their group. And they kind of are just there to be the comedic relief. While on the other hand, Oliver and Steve from Stranger Things seem like they are kind of on a rampage in a sense, and them taking someone younger under their wing kind of balances them out, which is actually very much seen kind of through Oliver. Obviously, the character Oliver does leave about 3/4 into the show to go off to New York, so that sucked. Also, the fashion in the show is actually quite good in my opinion. Uh, one of the characters, Emmeline, who is this, I guess the best word is theater nerd, is a kind way to put it. She is kind of seen as Oliver's girlfriend throughout a lot of the season until episode 8, when Oliver leaves for New York and essentially dumps her, as he doesn't even tell her that he leaves. So she goes through a drastic change of kind of very, in a sense, kind of plain clothes, very boring, to in episode 8 she's wearing all black, obviously showing how she's very much depressed, to then in episode 9 and 10 she comes like out guns blazing pretty much, showing that she's finding herself and she's finding her style, and she obviously feels comfortable in this new style that she has found for herself because it embodies her, which I think was actually a very good arc thing. I love it when clothes help you understand a character more. Speaking of that, Kate, as we reviewed in the show Trinkets, uh, there are sometimes ways to tell if a character is a lesbian on screen based on clothes because of visual context clues, and the same with Kate. However, obviously with Kate it's a little different as her father Ken is the one who buys her the clothes, so she probably doesn't have that much choice over what she does and doesn't have. However, I would think that she would get some input, and obviously she wears a lot of flannel. She wears a lot of what seems t-shirts, and then a flannel button-up shirt that she keeps unbuttoned over that. So, and then she wears jeans, and I think she wears bands as well. So obviously that's a quote very lesbian look. Which personally for me, I just honestly liked her style because she had a very casual style, and especially since the show takes place in the 90s, it's not like they would have any name brands or very like ex- extravagant clothes because as we've seen throughout the years, fashion has changed and become more extravagant. So obviously back in 1996, the fashion wasn't like super crazy, which is, as I said, something very good about the show because that was just with all the characters kind of just looked normal with just the way that they dressed. They didn't like have anything like surprising or whatever. Most of them actually did like wear some just plain shirt with maybe like stripes or checker color pattern, I guess. So that was really good. Like, and even like the quote statement pieces, which one of them was Oliver's um olive green I guess trench coat, I guess you would say that. Even that looked like it was something that he could have picked up at a thrift store. So that I actually very much enjoyed that. That was very good. And now I want to move into the dialogue and the plot. So as I said before, uh the the description of the show says the best way to make it through high school for them is to make a movie, and that will help them get noticed. It's true, but it's not true, and I found that it was actually kind of interesting that it took I think up to episode 3 to actually build to because it just oh sorry not episode 3 episode 4 because in episode 3 uh Kate pulls the fire alarm which then kind of sets off everything else, which is very interestingly weird that it kind of takes till episode 4 to kind of give the show a direction to go in because obviously episodes 4 through 10 are consumed with kind of making the movie, but as well as everything else in between, like Luke's relationship with his mother and his father, as well as his relationship with Kate's dad Ken and his relationship with his friends McQuaid and Tyler and Kate as well with Kate dealing with her sexuality and McQuaid dealing with his budding feelings towards Emmeline. I feel like in the first episode, they do have like a lot of. It's a very good episode to kind of set up, but I feel like it could have moved a little faster in the sense of possibly maybe the kiss could have actually happened, or Luke could have tried to kiss her, possibly. I don't know. In the first episode, which would then cause it, which could then somehow set a chain reaction. Honestly, personally for me, I don't know how I get there faster. I just feel like in the first 3 episodes, it's kind of more build up to the fourth episode, which is very good because it obviously gives you a very good sense of what these characters are like, but also it kind of just lays everything out on the table to then deal with in episodes 4 through 10. However, even though the plot doesn't, personally in my opinion, doesn't really pick up till episode 4, the dialogue of the show is actually very good in my opinion. It was very quick, it was very snappy, it could be very emotional and very comedic. Sometimes, not sometimes at the same time. It could be emotionally powerful. A good amount of the times there were very big monologues that I think were really good. But yeah, like one of the biggest monologues, which actually I think is a monologue that many um queer people can relate to, is Kate's monologue when she is her and Luke are right outside of the theater after the Tori Amos concert, and Kate has just gotten mad at Luke because he's like, "Well, this is a date," and she's like, "No, this isn't a date. I'm a lesbian." And he's like, "Well, what's the difference between a fake and a real date?" And she's like, "Stop. This relationship is never gonna happen." And then she gives her whole speech, which I think was in episode 6. Yeah, but Kate's speech about how was the freak because her mother died, which we then learned that she actually committed suicide, which is horrible. As well as she's the principal's daughter, which kind of puts her in an awkward position with all her other classmates. And then her knowing that she isn't straight. Obviously, it was probably very hard for her because she lives in the time of 1996, and that was 24 years ago, and obviously 24 years ago being gay was still seen pretty much everywhere. Not pretty much everywhere, but in a good amount of places. A disease or God's punishment or something like that. And especially in Oregon, which is where this takes place, Boring, Oregon, which is a real place. As we talked about with trinkets last week, Oregon is a pretty racist state, so it's not that far of a stretch to say that they're probably homophobic and overall conservative as well. So my point of that was her whole speech about being the freak, how she looks to the future to hope that she wouldn't have to be a freak, and that's like how much she wants. Personally, for me, I really connected with that speech because when I was personally figuring out my sexuality, I kind of saw myself as a freak and I saw myself as weird, and I was the only one, especially because I go to an all boys school and homophobia is not uncommon there. So I very much understood how Kate was feeling, and I think that's a very, as I keep saying, a very good speech because I think it resonated with a lot of queer audience members, as well as people who are straight who are maybe going through something else. Possibly they are going through maybe something with mental health that maybe because even now some mental health in places is taboo, and so some people might think that they're the only person who is going through it, so they might feel like they're a freak. No one understands them. So I thought that was a really good monologue. And then as well, another really good one that I also liked again from Kate was actually her when she told Luke about how her mother killed herself. I think that was, it was very sad, and it kind of shows, it does show how strong Kate is, but also I think again it relates back to the freak monologue of how like uh well, comparative to this one, this is about losing someone. Obviously there's probably a good amount of people who have lost a very close family member who could kind of relate to Kate's monologue. However, I want to talk about the funnier stuff. The show is very comedic. I thought it was very funny. Like There's always like little comedic pieces that they throw in places that just make it feel so much funnier and so much more realistic. For example, when um the the kids are driving up to Dominguez Rocks in episode 8, um, they're all singing a song, and then you see Tyler, his voice just cracks, and it just seems like a very funny, very realistic scene. I thought that was really funny. And then pretty much there were times in the pilot episode where Kate, or sorry, not Kate, Emmeline and Oliver are just being weird as they are, giving, like, for example, the way they're introduced with their Romeo and Juliet uh thing. I thought that was quite funny. And I think that was actually a very good mock of theater kids, because there are sometimes the theater kids can be a little over dramatic, which is probably an understatement for the characters of Emmeline and Oliver, but still. As well as, so even though it's funny, I do I do want to get back to, here's a funny, it's a comedic one, but also it's a, again, very good hard one in the pilot episode where Kate has the Playboy and she's checking out all the girls. Which, side note, I was actually surprised that they got away with a TV-14, even though they did show breasts. And it's not to say, it's just, as it's seen, breasts on a woman are considered TVMA. So personally, for me, I was actually kind of happy that they got away with the TV-14 rating, because Kate's arc throughout the season, which I will talk about later when I talk more about her character, was a very relatable arc, and that's the 1996 version of watching porn. So obviously, very relatable. Happy they got away with the TV-14 rating. But the point is, when the dad comes in and he gives his speech about body acceptance, it's very funny. Because you think that he's gonna be like, "Oh, my daughter's a lesbian." No, he thinks it's she's checking out all these boys and girls, just solely girls, in the Playboy, because she wants to look like them, which I loved his speech about body acceptance, because especially right now with like Instagram and TikTok and just pretty much every social media platform ever, there's always guys and girls who are posting in like as little clothing as possible, showing off their bodies, which obviously I give it up for them. Trying to get a body like that is very hard to do, but also it can make other people feel bad because they feel like they must live up to that. So again, I loved Ken's speech. It was very good. And it was also comedic. What was actually really interesting though about the dialogue was that, so there were parts that did kind of seem, or did seem like they were trying to come off as comedic, but they didn't. For example, in episode 2, the opening scene, Kate, Emmeline, and then two of like Emmeline's friends are in the locker, and Emmeline's talking about looking at some dude's penis or something like that, and just the way that the interaction goes, I got the vibe that was supposed to be funny, but for me, I just found it very weird, and I just, it was very, like, there were other pieces that didn't hit their mark, possibly. For example, in episode 8, the bus scene again, when Tyler comes onto the bus and then he explains that Oliver is left. You hear Luke shout, "He what?" Personally, for me, I thought that was where they were gonna try to sneak in like the F word, be like, "He what the," and then like a screech noise or something like that would like kind of bleep out the F word. And another thing that kind of seemed like it was gonna come off comedic, but it didn't really, which was uh kind of a little sad for me was just I was already talking about before with Emmeline and Oliver, but just personally for me, there were points where Emmeline and Oliver could kind of get too crazy. It was to the point of it past comedy, and it's just in the land of I don't like you. I don't know, which actually kind of makes me want to talk about the characters because it did seem like their characters went through a character flip. But I'm gonna first talk about two main characters, Luke and Kate. So first, Luke. Luke is obviously, so as it stated, he's the ringleader of the group. He's very confident. He's got a drive. He knows what he wants to do. He wants to make films in LA or New York, and he is probably 13, maybe 14, somewhere around there, as he is a freshman. So I actually related to that, as I knew what I wanted to do when I was 13 as well. I wanted to become a screenwriter, and that's why I'm actually applying for as a major in college right now. So I did relate to Luke on that note. Luke, as I said, he's got drive. He's got independence, obviously, as his dad is not around, and then his mom is a flight attendant, so she's obviously not around. So he's got survival skills, and he's resourceful, and he's smart, and he's kind to a point. Obviously, as the episodes go on, he becomes mean. I didn't like that he kind of became an a-hole because it made sense for the direction of his character. And I am also happy that it didn't happen for that long either. He kind of starts becoming like mean in episode 8, and then episode 9 he kind of flip-flops around. Sorry, episode did I say episode 8? I meant episode 7. He kind of flip-flops around with as he's trying to make a green screen so his blue aliens from his movie don't fade or become, I guess, transparent. Uh, and then episode 8, he gets better until obviously at the end when he flips out on Kate. But personally, for me, I totally agree with that scene with him saying how even the I agreed and I didn't agree, but it made sense to his character where he's like, even though you're not my girlfriend, you don't, or you find new ways to break my heart. And it's just obviously Kate was trying to do her best with trying to get Luke to go talk to his father, and her intentions were pure, but sadly, she missed the mark. But yeah, and then episode 9, Luke really becomes an a-hole, and I really, really did not like that. But he comes around in episode 10, and I think what really triggers him is the phrase, a real artist doesn't need friends or family, which everyone needs friends and family. So I was very happy that he turned his act around, because there are other characters in other shows who are kind of just straight up horrible, and they just say sorry once, and then it seems like all their sins are forgiven. But with the complexity of his character, with his relationships to the other characters, like for example, Kate, he apologizes to her. Like he wasn't fully in the wrong, and he obviously wasn't fully in the right. More in the wrong, obviously. But not only did he say sorry, but he said sorry again through his movie Intergalactic Lust, with the end portion of the movie, or I guess the last scene of the movie, pretty much. So, or one of the last scenes before the movie. So, I did like that. But speaking of Kate, let's get into her. So, Kate, she's a lesbian. Was there more to say? A good amount. She's a very good character because she's she's I guess in a sense she's the quote not like other girls girl, especially she's not like other girls because she is a
lesbian, and the only other queer character in the show is Emmeline, who is bisexual, pansexual. I know she's not a lesbian because she obviously did love Oliver, it seemed. So the only other queer character is Emmeline. But the point is, yeah, especially Kate's life obviously seems to be very hard. And as I was talking about before, Emmeline flip flopping around with her personality. At the beginning of episode 2, not only does Emmeline say, or she's pretty homophobic to Kate, but she also like grabs Kate's hand and puts on her boob, which I'm pretty sure is sexual assault. And obviously, maybe no. And obviously, not there's no maybe. And obviously, that is sexual assault. And from Kate's perspective, it's just a bully bullying her. So, um, it really sucked for her. But she's a very complex character, as she seems like she has a lot of emotional, traumatic events happening in her life, with her figuring out that she's into girls and her mom's death and so much more. So I really liked how they gave her complexity. They did give her, they kind of did use tragedy to give her complexity in a sense, but they also really fleshed out her character, and like they fleshed out the complexity of her tragedies. Like, for example, the way that she remembers her mom is through the song Rocket Man, uh, by Elton John, which seems, as I am looking it up, there it's Elton John wrote the song Rocket Man in the midst of a massive coke binge, which I'm not sure if that is true or not, but it just seems like the lyrics is it's in a sense a very good metaphor for her mom, because another meaning to the song is about this astronaut in their relationship to their family, and you could kind of see the astronaut as the mom and how she has literally left Earth. And Kate and her mom obviously had a very strong relationship. So I did like that they kind of did flesh out the complexity of that. And I think just the way that they did that was just giving Kate initiative and lots of screen time. So I was very happy about that. But now let me talk about Emmeline and Oliver. Emmeline. So she seemed to flip flop a lot throughout the show. In the beginning, she's obviously very, uh, like, sorry, you can cut this part out, Eddie. She's very, into drama, and she's very crazy about it, to the point of, when Luke takes the blame for pulling the fire alarm, she then starts harassing him, not only verbally through the phone, but also physically in detention when she pokes him with a pen. Uh, and it was kind of very weird how she kind of just flipped a switch and she became nicer, and that was actually more or less kind of, in a sense, a little too late for me. Like, it seemed like it really only happened in episode 7, but yeah. Or not episode, sorry, not episode 7. Episode, pretty sure it's, no, it is 7. So in episode 7, when she really starts to kind of turn out to be a good character because of Oliver's mentoring Tyler in a sense, and so Emmeline just follows suit, and then she obviously becomes nicer to Cade, and then yeah. And I would actually kind of compare this relationship to the relationship in the show Sex Education of Eric and Adam. I didn't ever watch season 2 because personally for me I didn't like the fact that they romanticized Eric getting together with his bully when he could have gone with, I think it was like a French exchange student who was also hot and he was unproblematic as far as I know. But Eric got with Adam, which was a little weird, especially because Adams never seemed to be like, he never really apologized for the fact that he kind of did all this bullying. And I don't know why I'm really giving Kate a pass here, but I just personally liked her, or sorry, not Kate, Emmeline. I just kind of giving her a pass, even though she does, sexually assault Kate by making Kate touch her boob in the gym locker room, which I thought was really nasty. Uh, but it kind of seems, obviously, that was in 1996, so the idea of sexual assault and like kind of what it is and what it means wasn't that big. But looking through it out of 20 in the lens of 2020, obviously it's a very bad thing, which I didn't like. However, I think Emmeline arc throughout the season was very good, and when she asserts herself as like her own entity instead of an attachment to Oliver, she becomes a very good character because she starts to get closer to Kate, and I think just her getting closer to Kate happens in an organic way because as you learn, Kate gets bullied by Emmeline because Emmeline is jealous of Kate because Kate just lives for herself, which I was very happy about. And then Kate does all, or not Kate, sorry, Emmeline. Emmeline does like the small stupid things, small stupid cute things. For example, in episode 10, when she brings Kate the blue ring pop for their movie date, pretty much. But let me talk about Oliver now. So Oliver, it was very weird of this character. Same with Emmeline, and same with the character McQuaid and Tyler. Emmeline seems to be framed as a side character, but personally for me, I thought she was a main character, even though it actually in the credits it says that she's only guest starring in the episode, which, even though I think she actually appears in all of the episodes compared to Oliver, who only appears in, well, I guess 9 out of 10 episodes because he's in the last one. But yeah. Oh, actually, he does appear in all 9 episodes. But yeah, the framing of the character Emmeline as a side character and the character Oliver as a main character, it made it feel very weird because Oliver didn't really seem to like have a purpose except kind of being the big brother to Tyler. Which, speaking of Tyler, he's also framed as a main character, but he is really a side character. But Oliver. So Oliver, he wants to leave and he wants to get out of boring art as soon as possible, and he wants to go off to New York to, I'm gonna guess, act on Broadway, as he does theater and he seems more into that if he'd want to go to New York compared to LA. Here's the thing about Oliver, in my opinion. Again, with Emmeline, he has a very flip-flop personality because in the first episode, in the first few episodes, he's very crazy. He's very loud. He's very abrasive, and he's very mean and rude. But then, kind of in episode 4, he kind of just switches his personality over when he pulls Tyler aside, and he makes it seem like he's starting to mentor him, which is kind of the trope. Again, comparing it to Stranger Things Steve and Dustin, but kind of also, in a sense, you could compare it to actually the other now Netflix original show, Cobra Kai, between the relationship of Johnny and Miguel. they kind of like have the same like mentor student relationship. And then Oliver does start to get better throughout the episodes. Personally, for me though, as well, one of the big things between Oliver and Emmeline is Emmeline seems she's a junior, and Oliver is a senior, and he wants to leave ASAP. Personally, for me, I think Oliver, like, I don't blame Oliver for leaving. Emmeline obviously seems to have abandonment issues or something of the sort, and it seems like everyone just wants to get out of that town because it's so literally boring, as it's called, Boring Oregon. Um, and nothing happens there. So just Oliver didn't owe Emmeline anything, and like it does actually seem like the way that it's written is that they're not actually blaming Oliver for wanting to leave, but they're in a sense in a sense celebrating Oliver's memory as he leaves his quote protege package, I guess you could call it, for Tyler, which then has his overcoat in it, which I actually did really like the show. His olive overcoat, I think, was pretty cool. But now I want to talk about two characters, Tyler and McQuaid. As I was talking about framing a main character and side character, they seem to be two main characters. However, here's the thing: Tyler's name is not even said till episode 3. I'm pretty sure. So I totally forgot his name until episode 3, until they said it. They started saying it more after episode 3, which is actually really weird that they didn't say in the pilot episode. But whatever, it's fine. Uh, but it didn't seem like they had that much reason to be there. They were just kind of stock characters. And obviously, the only reason for Tyler to exist was to motivate Oliver to be a better person, it seemed. And McQuaid exists, obviously, for when Oliver leaves for New York and McQuaid takes over. And then also, in a sense, having I can't English, having an internal conflict with himself when he starts to like Emmeline, but then he walks in on Emmeline and Kate making out in the auditorium. Obviously, as I was saying, the show didn't get season 2, but in season 2, I'd really have loved to see them have more agency with themselves. So that would have been nice. So I want to move on to theories of the show, even though, as I'm saying, there's no season 2. The cliffhanger of the show is a few things. Number one, it seemed like Kate was going to come out to Ken, but then stopped, which personally for me, I actually did like. I did and I didn't like. I didn't like it because we'll never see her come out to her dad, so that really sucks. But I did like it personally for me because I think it made realistic sense that I don't know, because I think she could tell that it wasn't quote the perfect time for her to come out, which is obviously kind of would be a big thing back in 1996, that you would have to have your dad perfectly happy and everything would have to be going perfectly right for them to. Obviously, we don't know Ken's character towards homophobia, as the only time that we see him deal with that is when the D slur is written on Kate's locker, which again, TV-14 rating, they get away with that, but the politician didn't get away with the F slur. Little weird, but again, as I was talking about before with the Playboy magazine showing the women's breasts, I'm happy because it's a very realistic thing for a 14-year-old or someone who is around the age of 14, possibly if there's rumors about them being not straight, to circulate and people starting to use homophobic slurs to bully them. So again, I was happy with that. But back to my point, Ken just says it's a horrible slur, and it means when two women, and then he gets cut off. So it does seem like Ken would be supportive, which I'm sad that we didn't get to see. And then the other big cliffhanger is as Luke's dad comes back to Luke and Sherry's house and knocks on the door, and then it pretty much just cuts to the end title scene. So you would obviously see the dynamic between Sherry, Ken, and the dad Leroy in season 2, which I think would have been a very interesting and good dynamic to see, because I would love to see that between all the characters. Another theory, or just, I guess, in a sense, possible plot line, as season 2, as I keep saying, would uh, be how would McQuaid take Emmeline making out with Kate? What would he do with that? How would he respond to that? Like, because as we know, Luke is more or less supportive of the fact that Kate is into girls, but we don't know what McQuaid's or Tyler's thoughts on that. So that is a possible plot line, which I would have really enjoyed. Now getting on to the recommending or not recommend. As I have been talking about the show, it's very obvious. Recommend the show. Personally, when I heard, or I think I actually watched the show after it got canceled for season 1, but obviously right now the internet is up in flames about the show. But sadly, even if the show was on the chopping block like right now for season 2, it would not probably not be made, because the actor Sydney Sweeney, who plays Emmeline, is also in the show Euphoria, and just from what I've heard, Euphoria is a very long show to shoot, so they would have to in theory they could recast Emmeline, but personally I thought Sydney Sweeney was great as Emmeline. But yes, I do recommend the show. It's a very good show. It's got great representation. I don't think I've actually really seen, besides the show Love Victor, but if you've been listening to at least one of my podcasts, I've probably at least said once, I don't like the show Love Victor for multiple reasons. And that's the only other show with a gay character as the main character. Whereas TV-14, obviously Kate isn't the main character. I would say Luke is the main character, but she's like the sub co-main character, if that makes sense. Which obviously her exploring her sexuality was a very great arc to see, and I would have obviously loved to see it more in season 2, as well as Luke um, being a POC. It's always great. Just in general, it's always great with minority representation, because pretty much a good majority of shows are cisgender, straight, white people who usually, if it's a teen show, it's literally 20-year-old-ish people who are playing these teens, who are very like tall and very attractive and ripped, or if they're a girl, they are very skinny and very pretty, and they follow kind of the model standard, being attractive model in the phrase of a model person who models clothes. But yeah, like in this show, they actually did cast kids. I think the most of the kids who played, like the kids play McQuaid, Tyler, Luke, and Kate were actually around 14 or 15 when they shot the first season. So it was actually, personally for me, I really like the fact that they actually got teens to play teens, which was a little weird when Emmeline kissed McQuaid and Kate, because there is a 5 to 6 year age gap between the two or I guess 3 actors pretty much. Um, so I thought that was a little weird, but yeah. Uh, in general, the show is very good. It's got a very good plot. It's very funny. It's very relatable. This is a very this show doesn't really have that any flaws. I would say really, each scene is integral to moving the plot forward. If it's not immediate, then it's for later episodes. And yeah, like overall, I recommend the show. I'm so sad that it did not get a season 2. But yeah. Next week, we will be watching the show, Ratchet, coming out on Netflix on the 18th. which I'm very excited for because the show looks very good, especially since it's created by Ryan Murphy, who, as I've said before, is one of my favorite writers.
So, I am your host, Ryan. This is the end of our podcast, and I will see you next week. Peace.